Well, welcome to QVC if you've just joined us. Thank you for staying with us. So let me introduce you to my guest who's sitting next to me, is the daughter of the world-famous Matt Monro, Michele. It's lovely to have you in the studio. Michele, you've put together the most beautiful set for anyone who's a fan of singers, of Matt, or who just loves the idea of just finding out the intimate details of a man who touched so many lives.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's great. It's the 25th year of his passing, and this is a celebration of the legacy he left behind. Yeah. Quite simply that. There's a book which I've signed for all QVC members, a DVD which is fantastic because not only has it got the only known concert to exist, full length,
really?
It also has 23 of his most memorable television performances. And in the old days, the BBC used to wipe over the tapes to save money.
Recycle them.
So these have taken me 22 years to find some of these. So long time coming out. Yeah. And it's all been remastered. And also a live audio concert of from Manila, which is fantastic, on CD. And then, of course, the brand new CD.
And it's got, what, something like 25
of his most memorable hits. But it also has one track that's never been released before called I'll Never Fall in Love Again.
I mean, it's just an incredible set. It is back in stock, sold out the last time. It's still available at an incredible price. You've got a 30-day money-back guarantee, but you're going to love this. 563-802. And I was just wondering, I mean, as a father myself, I was just wondering, as a kid when you're growing up, it's Dad. But when did you first realise that your dad was special?
Yeah, quite late, because, you know, for me, he was just Dad. That was it. I didn't realise it was any different until I went to one of his shows. And literally the lights came down and one lone spotlight lit the stage. And on walked this man who was a giant. I mean, his whole presence filled the stage, yet he was a very small man, you know. And literally the applause went through the air before he'd sung a note. Yeah. And for me, the fact that the audience had given this accolade before he'd sung was quite astounding. By the time he'd finished the performance, they were on their feet, yelling for more. And going backstage, I was absolutely stampeded out of the way. And that's when I realised that there were two personas here, one my dad and one who I had to share, this other person.
Well, how was it to have to share? I mean, we see the pictures inside. I mean,
these are some of my favourite photographs.
But how was it to have to share your dad with the whole world?
Oh, I was very jealous, yes. Yeah. I was a small child as well, and he was travelling 9 months of every year, so the time he was home was very precious. Then he'd be home a week, yet he wasn't at home. He'd be in the studio rehearsing, he'd be doing press interviews and photo calls. So very limited time together. So, you know, I was Daddy's princess. So, you know,
every daughter's Daddy's princess.
Yes, but I got jealous, you know, when it was time to go elsewhere, you know.
50 people have already ordered their copies of this, and I have to say, choosing some tracks to let you listen to is really hard. We'll ask you about some of your favourites, but Georgie Girl was something that a lot of people requested, and we can not only hear it, we can also see the man in action. With other singers like Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Sammy Davis Jr. Saying that Matt Monro was the singer, I mean, it must have been very daunting to decide to write a book about your dad. What actually got you started and thought, I'm going to have to do this?
Well, quite a few authors had approached his estate after he passed away, but it just didn't feel right to me and Mum. And a few years ago, I had a near-fatal car crash, and literally I didn't know whether I was going to make it. And I had this awful thought that if something happened to me, my son would never know more than his grandfather was a great singer. And that wasn't enough, because you know, this is origins, it's your roots. And I thought, you know, I can't just let that disappear with me. So for now, for me, to get the book out means it goes in the British Library and is there forever.
So people will know and will be able to refer to it. But I was thinking, I mean, you were Daddy's little princess. Yes. It's very difficult, I imagine, I mean, Daddy wasn't always great. Daddy told you off sometimes. There were negative things about every daddy. Was it tempting to try and ignore all those and just, you know, paint the rosy picture?
I suppose you did in one way. I mean, not a lot of people know, but he was an alcoholic as well. And that was very hard some of the years that almost the bottle took over. But then again, seeing him triumph through adversity was also wonderful and made me even prouder of him to get through it and to stay, you know, off the bottle for many years until his death.
I think it was Frank Sinatra that said that he was note perfect. I mean, he just
his diction was amazing,
Yes.
and his breath control was absolutely sublime.
But he wasn't a trained singer. He didn't go for lessons. This was he taught himself in the pub.
No music in the family whatsoever, and in fact he went for lessons and and asked, and they said we can't. This yours is a
If
gift.
it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Absolutely, and he didn't presume to argue.
Well, that's good. Well, actually, we can hear how just perfect it was when he sings some classic songs. I think we all know the song "Born Free," but when Matt Monro sings it, it's very special. A little excerpt from the concert that's part of this set, which is the DVDs, the CD, and the signed book for you. And actually, that concert must have been pretty special.
It is. It's the only one to exist. And funny enough, a company had approached me 18 years almost after he passed away to make a documentary. And I said, oh, well, I don't know what I've got, but take these reels with you and see what's on them. And it was that concert. And it'd been sitting in the garage for years because we didn't know what it was. And Daddy used to be a television buff and a film buff. So he had all these cine films unmarked. And that's what it was, an unmarked canister.
Wow, what a treasure.
It was fantastic to find that.
I mean, obviously, with a catalogue of songs that's as long as anyone's, is it easy or can you choose a favourite?
Well, it's difficult because, gosh, there's so many. But one of my most thing that I don't know that makes me feel really warm is Michele, because it was the first time I went into the recording studio with him, and he didn't tell me what he was going to sing. And George Martin sort of knocked his baton, and it all went very quiet. Dad called me over, held my hand, and then started singing Michele.
Wow.
And that was the actual record that was pressed and released. So that is very special to me.
Now, the combination is superb because we've got the CD, which we can listen to, we've got the DVDs so we can watch, and we've got a very, very personal book. And I mean, over 200 people have already ordered it since midnight last night, so very, very popular. But it's the personal book. I mean, it's been written not as a kind of cold story of a man. This is from your heart about your dad.
It is, but it's not a fairy tale either, because I had to make a decision. Either I was going to write the proper story, the real story, or I wasn't going to write it at all. So yes, I mean, obviously, it is written by me, but I've actually written it in the third person.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to be saying, oh, well, Daddy this and Daddy that. I wanted the reader to forget who the author was and just be immersed in the book. And what's so fantastic for me is that there's over 100 photos in there, and they're actually on the pages where the story is, and it makes it really come to life, rather than just having a few stuck in the book.
How was it to write a book about your dad? Was it difficult to keep going to the end of the book?
Yeah, I didn't realise how emotional it would be. And also, there were things I found out about Dad I really didn't know, and that one of them being he came from such an impoverished background, didn't really realise how poor he was or what a struggle he'd had. And it was quite interesting because his own father died at 3. His mother went into a sanitarium, so was put in a home. And so that need for applause, I could understand later. He needed to feel that he had something worthwhile to give back. But throughout it all, he never became affected. He was a very humble man.
I was just going to ask, because I mean, he could be playing the headline in Vegas. He's up there with Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. I mean, all the big names.
Oh yeah.
Was he good at being a celebrity?
He wasn't, no, because he was just him, He was one of the people, and I think that's what endeared him to so many millions, that they felt like he was one of them. When he sang, he had the ability to cross the footlights, and they felt that he was only singing to them. But I remember when I was in Vegas with him, and I was being taken to see Sammy Davis Jr., who was a great, thrill for me.
What a star.
And yet, halfway through the show, he announced that one of the greatest singers in the world was in the audience. He called Daddy up, and they stole the night. I mean, the two of them. And I just realised, wow, I thought he's one of the peers, not an also-ran. And of course, Sammy Davis was one of his great friends.
Well, I have to say, Michele, I think it's just a wonderful job. The book, the DVDs and the CD is the perfect combination, and it's wonderful for any Matt Monro fan or anyone who's just interested in singers.
Yes, and I mean, I wanted to sign it for the members of QVC to make it that little bit more special.
Well, it's a real collector's item. Michele, it's been a great pleasure having a chat with
Simon.
you. We've got to hear Matt one more time, and I think we're going to finish with From Russia with Love. They're all on the DVDs. Enjoy them all.